So I wanted to give a big warm welcome to everyone to this masterclass. I absolutely love talking about constipation, and this is the first time I've ever jumped on to things as a live setting. I've either worked with a few of you or it's either meeting you for the first time or I've connected with you on Instagram, whatever space that is, welcome, and it's very nice to connect. As I mentioned, love chatting about constipation because I don't know if you've realized on Instagram, I think it's completely mismanaged in the medical industry. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting good quality information out there that people can actually understand and implement and get to a point where bowels are moving really well. All right, before I run into things, I wanted to go through a little bit of logistics. But what I want to do while I'm running through logistics is I'd love everyone to pop into the chat box. I think everyone has access to it, just about where you're zooming in from. So I'm from Newcastle, which is 2 hours north of Sydney. We've had loads of rain recently and a big mold outbreak in our home. So we're moving out this weekend, thank goodness. But let me know where you all are from. Okay, cool. I've got a few coming through. Adelaide, Melbourne, South Australia. Hello from Wollongong. Cool. Okay, very Sydney, very Australia at the moment. Bendigo, Melbourne. Awesome. Okay, cool. As you start sending them through, I'll run through just logistics. So let's keep questions to the end. You're more than welcome to pop them in the chat box if I touch on a topic that's of interest. So pop that in the chat box for me, but I won't address any of them until we get right to the end. And for anyone that's either jumping in today and there's something I touch on, you want to have access to that later down the track. You have access to a recording for 72 hours afterwards, and it's for also everyone else that is unable to make it tonight, and they'll jump in on and watch it at a later date. Um, so stick around. We've got some awesome information. And then right at the end, I've got a really cool offer that I'd love everyone that's turned up to the masterclass. I'd love to send it through to you. So let's jump into things and get started. So what we're going to chat through today is actually understanding constipation, really understanding what causes constipation. So the things that get spoken about and the things that don't often get spoken about, how to test constipation, how to treat constipation, and then, as I mentioned, the little offer that I would love to pop in right at the end. So, for those of you who know me, who I've connected with, who I've worked with, hi again. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name's Greta Rose, and I'm an accredited functional nutritionist that specializes in anything to do with digestion and working from anywhere from constipation, diarrhea, gas, bloating to more chronic and complex conditions like IBD, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and some cancer patients. But before I go into who I am now today, I wanted to rewind about 30 years ago. I was a very colicky baby, extremely constipated, very gassy, very bloated, chronically fatigued, had loads of brain fog, low iron, which I'm now finding a lot in my clients. So there's a big link between gut and iron, whole lot of food intolerances, and I sadly grew up on things like Coloxal, Senna, suppositories, the old prune juice trick, multiple gastro specialist appointments with no real answer. And so I really resonate with everyone that comes through and they just feel like they haven't really gotten the answers they want to from the medical system. So then fast forward through to today, I built everything that I've got now off the back end of having a gut that just didn't function the way that it should. So I went on to study a Bachelor of Health Science in nutritional medicine, and then took further studies to work in the functional medicine space. I've got coming up to over 20 years of clinical experience, and that time has absolutely flown. And I actually opened up a multimodality clinic called the Gut Biome Clinic. And we are a team of multimodality practitioners that work within the gut space. And if you don't believe me that I love the gut, I went on and married a gastroenterologist. I married him for the second time. We had two weddings at the end of last year and then again about 3 weeks ago. So our conversations are very much centered around poo and digestion and diarrhea and bloating. But I do have this overarching mission in everything that I do. And it's my just sole purpose to be able to get in contact or in touch with over 1 million people, to be able to support them just to have an incredible daily bowel motion. I just think the world would be a much happier place if we were all going to the bathroom well. So let's jump into actually understanding what constipation is and what is actually going on. Now, I don't know if anyone has heard of the Rome criteria before, but the Rome criteria is a diagnostic tool that a lot of your gastros or GPs will use to diagnose certain things. You have to meet a certain criteria for then you to fall into a diagnosis. So they use it to diagnose IBS, diarrhea, constipation, bloating. You need to fit that set criteria. So the criteria for constipation is fewer than 3 bowel motions per week, a hard stool in more than 25% of bowel motions, or a sense of incomplete evacuation in more than 25% of your overall bowel motions. I think you know by now, I don't love to agree with how they diagnose people for constipation. And so I don't agree with this Rome criteria. And what I wanted to do was talk about what my actual criteria is and what I think will allow me to successfully diagnose constipation. So, not passing a daily movement, or, and this is a big or only passing small amounts. Some people can be having a bowel motion every single day and still be constipated. I know in hospitals they won't let you leave unless you've had a bowel motion, and that could be the smallest attempt, the smallest little nugget, and they're happy to send you on your way. You're still constipated. Nothing has been fixed there. Feeling incomplete at most bowel movements, if not all. And that incomplete feeling is a big one I check in with patients. So I want people to have a great bowel motion. At the end of it, be like, yes, that felt great. I feel empty. See you next time tomorrow. It's that feeling of if you've done a pico prep. That's the feeling of, and a lot of my constipated patients, like for the first time, are just like, oh, that pico prep was so awful, but so good. I just felt so empty. An over 24-hour stool transit test, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Any abdominal pain, straining, hemorrhoids, fissures, loss of appetite, nausea, or bloating, and any gas or flatulence. And then also that fatigue or brain fog is a really, really big one. And so why is this an issue, and why do I bring up my criteria compared to that Rome criteria? It's an issue because it's keeping 30% of the population constipated. If you're not falling into this Rome criteria, if you're not falling into the category of what we think constipation is, then we won't get proper treatment for it. We won't get proper support. We won't get that proper diagnosis. So I do believe that the criteria for constipation does need to be tweaked ever so slightly. And when we are talking about the gut, we want to think of it like a drain pipe. And this is a great analogy for us at the moment with our mold going on, because a big issue with our mold, the owners came over and found that one of the drain pipes is actually full of dirt and debris, and basically running from the house to the road completely blocked the whole way. Amazing analogy. If that is blocked, we then get mold in the home, or we get constipation, brain fog, we get complications that are happening. Why this analogy is quite important, it's for two main reasons. So first one, the blockages build up. So like any pipe, if it's blocked, pressure or problems build until it's actually cleared, and it's until we get the bowel or the pipe moving. And what's interesting is, unlike any other body system in or organ in the body, The bowel actually doesn't have the option to reroute. It is one way. If it's coming up the other way, something's seriously wrong. So we need to keep that pipe flowing. We need to keep it clear. We need to keep things moving. The other issue is our bowel is the first exposure or the only exposure that the inside of our body has to the outside world. And what I mean by this is food and toxins and microbes come in through our mouth, we swallow them into the stomach, and that food or microbes or toxins are having a direct contact with the gut lining, and the gut lining then absorbs it into the bloodstream and into the rest of the body. It is so important that we continuously keep that pipe moving, because if we have things that we don't want to absorb into the body sitting in the bowel or the gut longer than we need to, we're absorbing a lot more of that. So I want you to keep that analogy in your mind when you're thinking about constipation. So what really causes constipation? And I want to talk about obviously some usual suspects, but then we'll get into some things that aren't usually spoken about. So the usual suspects are the really common ones: the dehydration, the low fiber, the physically inactive. Medications can be a big one. Hormones play a big part with movement and motility. So pregnancy and also menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause. Thyroid has a huge impact as well. So my underactive thyroid patients, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism can have a big impact in bowel motions. IBS, diabetes, stress, and unfortunately cancer can also have an impact with constipation. I think they're the ones we know about, but these are the hidden causes that aren't usually spoken about, not even really with a doctor. So a high fiber diet, I know that sounds really contradicting, because once we're constipated, the doctor just says, let's get you on a high fiber diet. Here's a fiber supplement. But time and time again, if I give high fiber to my constipated patients and we haven't gotten the bowels moving first, we're going to cause more gas, more bloating, more distension, feeling really uncomfortable. So a really high fiber diet can be an actual cause of constipation. Of course, we want to get you to a point where you're having high fiber, but it's not priority just yet. High saturated fat, this is red meat, cheese, butter, and eggs, which are all they're really good for us, those foods. And I think people would often look at that and be like, look, I eat a lot of them in my diet. I have eggs every day, but it's actually something that's keeping the bowels constipated. So saturated fat, high saturated fat in the diet, definitely. Low digestive enzyme. Now, the best way I explain digestive enzymes is there's a dish, there's a little bit of meat sitting on that dish, and we pour a little bit of liquid onto that meat. Now, that liquid is our digestive enzymes. We come back in 2 hours, that meat has disintegrated and partially digested and broken down. That is because our enzymes are so acidic that it will break down a lot of the proteins in that in whatever food is sitting there. It also acts as a domino effect for the gut. If there's enzymes coming through, our gut lining is like, okay, it's time for me to digest. Let me start triggering some movements, some muscle contractions. Let's get the bowels moving. If we've got low enzyme function, there's nothing to signal to the digestion to say, let's start moving and digesting. So those muscles contractions don't work as well as we'd like them. Therefore, that constipation picture starts. Food sensitivities definitely can be a big one with constipation. And then we've got electrolyte imbalance as well, which is also a really interesting one. And it's a lot more than just here, have a bit more water because you're dehydrated. Histamine intolerance and celiac. Celiac is an interesting one. I have had quite a few patients be diagnosed with celiac a lot later in life. It is an autoimmune condition or autoimmune disease, so can switch on at some point. So it's just worth keeping that one. Or I will always, if people are coming to me for constipation, I'm always ruling out celiac just as a really low-hanging fruit for them. Structural issues I don't think get talked about enough. So, pelvic floor dysfunction, we've got a whole net of muscles that sit in the pelvic floor, especially for a lot of my women patients post birth. If it was a vaginal birth, a big bub, quite big birth, there may be some pelvic floor dysfunction go on. Dr. Dan, my husband, came home from an incredible conference. There was a rectal surgeon that came in and spoke about constipation and pelvic floor dysfunction. Super fascinating. But what actually happens is the peak of bowel disruption doesn't happen until 20 years after childbirth because we have so many muscles that compensate and come in. And what can happen is people can be constipated post birth. 20 years later, they then turn more into a diarrhea picture just because the muscles get so weak. So definitely looking at pelvic floor, any types of prolapse, so that will really impact how the bowel is moving and how things are moving through the bowel. Discoordination of muscles. So this is actually something called dysynergic constipation. And I would encourage if any of this resonates with someone, please Google dysynergic constipation because I've caught a few people who really fit the picture, and once you know about it, you can't unknow about it. But basically, what happens is you push down and strain, and as you push down and strain, you squeeze the rectum. So it's almost like if you were squeezing toothpaste out of a toothpaste packet, but you squeezed the end of it so the toothpaste wasn't coming out. And can be a result of many, many years of constipation, many years of straining as well. Hemorrhoids and fissures, SIBO, so a methane dominant SIBO picture. So that's more of not so much structural with the organs, but that's a structurally imbalance of the microbiome. And then also MMC dysfunction, so migrating motor complex dysfunction. I've pulled out a lot of big words here, but what that means is a disruption in that squeezing motion that moves things through the bowel. And then lifestyle things, so ignoring the urge. I don't know if anyone here has the same thing, but I'll even have it, even as a practitioner that works in this space. Sometimes you go to a public bathroom or an office and your body physically does not let you have or pass a bowel motion. Traveling, and that's out of nerves. Traveling or shift work, so sitting down for long periods of time, changes in your body clock, so getting that changing. Unresolved toilet training trauma, and I found this in my research about 6 months ago, and I thought it was really interesting. So if any children have really bad experiences with toilet training, wetting themselves, soiling themselves, it can actually lead to bowel issues later in life. Poor sleep, circadian rhythm, being in that fight or flight, so that really stressed out mode, and a high use of laxatives. And I will say this loud and clear that laxatives are usually keeping your bowels constipated, unless we can transition off that. And we're going to have a chat about how we do that in a moment. So, if left untreated, being in that constipated state or having stool sit in the bowel for really long periods of time can extremely disrupt your microbiome. And I'm sorry, I've said the word microbiome a few times, and if anyone doesn't know what I mean, they are the tiny little, I don't want to say bugs because bugs isn't the right word, but they're tiny little living microbes that live in the gut and actually they're using your body as a host basically. So everything we eat, everything as bowels move through, we either feed or kill off some microbes. So having stools sit in the bowel for a really long period of time can unfortunately we can have a bloom or an overgrowth of some of these microbes. And this is why we keep talking about a methane or a hydrogen dominant SIBO. It's more your methane dominant SIBO that have that constipated picture, but we can get that disruption in the microbiome. If left untreated, we can get damage to the gut lining. So things like leaky gut or intestinal permeability, which can then go in and start to really impair people's nutrient absorption. We work in a clinic that specializes in gut, and we see, oh gosh, so many gut patients come through. And I would say about 70% of our patients have some type of nutritional deficiency going on, just because that gut lining, unfortunately, is so impaired. We can get fecal impaction, and I've got an example of that coming up. We can get colon damage, so weakening of the bowel muscles. If we've got high, dry, hard stool in the bowel and the muscles are constantly squeezing around that, it's like anything. Our gut just gets weak and tired and they stop firing up. And we can also get something called a long bowel. If anyone on here has had a colonoscopy and they've said, I can see that there's a long bowel, or you've been diagnosed with long bowel, constipation can be a big factor towards that. We can get trigger of food intolerances, and we can get really pushed into that chronic and inflamed state. So let's have a chat about how we can actually test for constipation. And this is something that you can do at your home. It is the most minimal intervention, low cost, effective way of tracking, looking at actually testing for constipation. And what we're doing here is actually looking at your transit time. So the first thing we need to do is establish that transit time. Transit time is basically how long it takes for food to go from your mouth through the whole way through the digestive tract and out the other end. And the way we do that, super high tech, really complex test, but we actually use sesame seeds. And I get people to ingest sesame seeds and watch them, track them, and see how long it takes to move through the digestive tract. And I'm so passionate about people understanding how to do the transit test, because I talked to Dr. Dan about how they test for constipation and movement. And it's things like radioactive dye. I've had people have like radioactive muffins, and then they track with an x-ray how long the muffin moves through the digestive tract. And it all to me just sounds so unnecessary. So we strip it right back. And this is what we do. This is, if you've worked with me in clinic, you've absolutely done multiple transit tests, and it's what I'll base a lot of my protocols and treatments off. So what you want to do, and you can do this tonight. So at about 7 o'clock at night, 7:30, it's basically last meal of the day. You want to get 2 heaped teaspoons of sesame seeds and add them to a glass of water and drink that down. Little bit of a hack here. The easiest way I have been able to do it is because you can get a weird texture with it, and it's a bit hard to get down. But what you want to do, 1 teaspoon into the mouth, do a few really big gulps of water. Second seed, few big gulps of water. And then that's done. That's all done. You then grab your phone or timer or however you want to do this. And there are 3 times that we want to look for here. The first time is when you first start to see the seeds. The second time is when majority of the seeds start coming through. And then the third one is when you stop seeing seeds. And that one's really important, when you stop seeing the seeds. Now, I've had patients do this and say, I never saw the seeds. The seeds never came through. Are they in my gut? Have they stayed in there? Am I growing more sesame seeds? And my recommendation with that is just give it about 5 days or a week. Do it for a second time, and now you know what you're looking for. See if they come through again. If there's still no If you still can't see anything, then the next thing you want to try is either corn or beetroot. But I find beetroot isn't as, it's not definitive. You know, sometimes you're like, is that a bit red? Is it not? I don't know what's going on there. So start off with sesame seeds, see how you go with it. What you're basically looking for is a stool that is speckled with a whole lot of white seeds through it. Biggest thing, biggest take home here is you want to know when you stop seeing the seeds. That's the important one. So what do you do when you get the results? This is what you want to look for. So ideally, in an ideal world, people take the seeds at 7 o'clock at night. They go to bed, have an amazing night's sleep, wake up in the morning, it hits 7 o'clock, they have a great bowel motion, and they keep going on with their day. It's so not the picture for a lot of my patients when I start working with them. So do your sesame seed test. If you're finding that your transit test is under 12 hours, and what that usually looks like is you take the seeds at 7 p.m., you may have a bowel motion at, say, maybe 11, 12 o'clock. There's diarrhea, there's quite urgency happening, and you start to see seeds coming through then.
Yep.
So that's a real indication that you've got a really fast transit time. And the issues with that is we can get nutritional deficiencies, as in the nutrients don't stay in the bowel for as long as we need them to. And so we're not absorbing them through the gut lining. We can get dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and dysbiosis, which is a change of that microbiome. The ideal, the sweet spot that we're looking for is that 12 to 18 hours. And that's that beautiful picture I was talking about before. Someone takes them at 7 p.m., has a great bowel motion at 7 a.m. the next morning, whole lot of seeds come through, and then they don't see them again. If it's taking about 24 hours for your seeds to come through, so bowel motion 7 o'clock, bowel motion not until, or sometimes people have a bowel motion the next morning, but they don't see the seeds. It's not until the next bowel motion. That is a real indication that there's constipation going on. And this becomes such an important tool because of the different patients that I've worked with. I had one patient who she told me she was having great bowel motions every day, feeling nice and complete, but there was a lot of gas and a lot of bloating going on. It wasn't until we did her seed test that she saw them the next day, but then she saw them consecutively for 10 days after that. And so that's telling me that it's taking 10 days for anything to move through her bowels. And so once we got her down to a 12-hour transit, all the gas, all the bloating went away completely, which was amazing. I had another patient who had she thought she had severe diarrhea, so a lot of urgency. She would have anywhere from 4 to 6 bowel motions a day, but she was also really bloated. I don't often see bloating and diarrhea happen at the same time. We did her transit test and it took her, what was it? It took her 3 days to start seeing any seeds. And then I think her transit time after that was about 72 hours. So I actually flipped her treatment plan on its head and started treating her for constipation, and we ended up getting such fantastic results for her. So when do we actually look at testing the seeds? So you want to do it prior to treatment. We just want to get your baseline. We want to get your base transit, and we want to know how your gut is functioning without any support, without any motility agents. If I have some patients that rely on Movicol or Coloxal to get a movement, if that's what you're doing at the moment, continue taking that, but make sure you do the seed test because it will actually tell you how successful this Movicol or Coloxal protocol is for you. You also want to do it while you're doing treatment. And so this will actually make you understand if your protocol or the combination of things you're doing is actually working. So in an ideal world, you do a transit test, it's over 24 hours showing there's constipation. You start your treatment or you start your protocol, and we do a test maybe 2 weeks in. And ideally, that transit test has come down to 12 hours. Where the test can also be quite good in the future is if things slow down. I find if people are constipated, they are always prone to constipation. I am extremely prone to constipation, and I do what I can to keep the pipes moving. But if I go traveling or like international travel, change in what's it called when you like change time zones, all of that will hit me hard. So I encourage, if things slow down in the future, you bring in your transit test and basically just start from scratch. Have a look at what your transit time is doing and start treating from there. So let's have a chat about how we actually treat constipation. And this is from a functional and nutritional medicine approach. By now, you've understood that I don't agree with the way that they treat constipation in the medical system. I think it's a very band-aid approach. And I think the fiber, drink more water, it's not even helping. Like, it's not even a good band-aid. Yeah. So let's have a chat about how to strategically do this. And I'm passionate about the way that I treat constipation because there's such a strategy to it. So here are your key hero supplements. And I will say to begin with, we are going to get to food at some point because we can't rely on supplements to get the bowels moving. But they are fantastic at actually doing the pipe clear out and actually moving the pipe through. So, three main things that I use for these key hero supplements. So, I'll use a motility agent, something called a prokinetic. You may not have heard that word before. And then a fiber, and then a fiber supplement is the last one I use. So, going through motility agents to begin with, they can be, I call them laxatives because it's the easiest way to describe it. But there's two types of laxatives that we can have. We can have an osmotic laxative or we can have a stimulant laxative. I don't know if anyone on here has had a stimulant laxative before, but there's a lot of griping, a lot of pain, a lot of like, just feeling absolutely awful in the stomach. And that is very much a stimulant laxative. And they are things like senna or magnesium oxide. They're both stimulant laxatives. I also find, I think they've improved a lot now, but the Pico Prep that people used to do, that used to be a stimulant laxative because it was the best way to basically nuke the whole gut and clear it out. But we're now finding that osmotic laxative, sorry, back to stimulant laxatives, you'll get really good results from them. It'll be very uncomfortable. That's basically it in a nutshell. The next one is an osmotic laxative. We call it osmotic because there's a process that goes on in the gut called osmosis, where water seeps through the gut lining and softens up the stool and basically bulks things up so we can have a really good, complete bowel motion. So the osmotic laxatives that I love working with are a magnesium citrate, magnesium glycinate, triphala, which is actually an Ayurvedic or Indian medicine, and cascara is herbal medicine. But these have a really nice gentle effect on the gut and can be quite successful in getting good bowel motions happening. Now, prokinetic, as I mentioned, you may not have heard the word prokinetic before, but prokinetic is something that encourages peristalsis. Sure, you haven't heard peristalsis either, but what that is the contractions of the muscles that go in this wave-like motion that basically move food from the stomach through the digestive tract and out the other end. And this is all, it's like the heart. We don't know the heart is beating, it does it on its own. Same as the gut. We have this continuous squeeze and relax of muscles to move food through. And that's called peristalsis. Prokinetic is something that kickstarts that peristalsis movement. So the best prokinetics that I love to use are iberogast, really high dose ginger, A bowel massage can actually be fantastic for a prokinetic, and a massage gun. I don't know if anyone has access to them, but they're the things that it looks like a big gun with like a massage ball on the end. If you use that at a very, very low frequency, and place that in the gut, or sorry, just on the stomach and move it around the abdomen, it will actually mimic peristalsis and encourage the gut to start moving. Coffee, all my coffee lovers out there will love to hear that coffee is a big prokinetic, and we all have that morning coffee and we're like, oh, I've got to go. And that's the reason why. Exercise as well. Exercise is great for getting the gut moving. And then the last one is fiber. I have a broom here because fiber acts as that kind of sweeping effect and sweeps the whole gut and moves everything through. The big ones we know about are psyllium husk and slippery elm. My clinical and personal experience is they're just very, very harsh on the gut, extremely harsh on the gut. So, what we want to do is use something that is a bit more gentle. And that's where PHGG comes in. It's very hot at the moment. Everyone's starting to talk and hear and know about PHGG. It's because it works so well. Something I choose to use every day because it feeds beneficial bacteria in the gut. So a PHGG, GOS and FOS are similar. They're all resistant starches or fibers that we use for the gut. Kiwi fruit, dragon fruit, and then 30 grams of plant fiber is also really fantastic. However, this isn't just about giving it to you all at once and expecting the magic to work. This is where the strategy and the strategic nature of constipation protocols come in. So, first of all, we bring in a motility agent and we find what works for you. We just need to get the bowels moving, and I don't care how that's happening. If you're still on your Movicol, or if you're still on your Coloxal or your Senna, awesome. Let's keep it that way. I will tweak things a little bit. I'll try and get you on a motility agent that I know potentially will work a bit better. But I get you on a motility agent, track your transit, make sure you're down at 2 hours, no, way too fast, 12 hours. And if we're all in the clear, then I move you on to the next phase. So I then bring in a prokinetic. So we're bringing something in. Motility agent will pull water into the bowel. Prokinetic will help the actual muscles start contracting. So motility agent's working just on the large bowel. Prokinetic is working on the whole digestive tract. So once we've got up to 2 and things are moving great and feeling fine, we then bring a fiber in. If we can get to all 3, bowels are moving extremely well, then I'll take away your motility agent. And this is what really gets missed in a lot of the clinical management of constipation is we find a motility agent that works and we're like, great, we're all in the clear. But our gut should function without the need for these supplements coming through. So I am so passionate about making sure we get people off their motility agent and prokinetic as well. I'll try and get you off that too and just keep you on a fiber. So what foods do we focus on? Because like I said, I'm a big food as medicine practitioner, especially with digestion. We need to be focusing on food and having a look at what we're putting in our mouth because it really can depict what our bowels are doing. I keep things really nice and simple. If you can just remember your 5 Ps here, I'll be really, really happy. So prebiotics, probiotics, polyphenols, really good quality protein, and then all of our plants, so our fruits and vegetables coming through. Now, I'll start off with probiotics. And probiotics, I'm sure we've all heard of. They are the little capsules that we usually take that have the beneficial bacteria or the beneficial strains in it. What they've done is they've basically commercialized or put them into a medication or a probiotic, but we can still get the same effects from things like yogurts and sauerkrauts, kefir, kimchi, all of our fermented foods. So they all hold a whole lot of probiotics. The thing is, we can't just consume these probiotics, these living bacteria, and expect them just to grow and proliferate in the gut. So, this is where prebiotics come through. And I want you to remember that prebiotics act as a fuel or a food source for the probiotics that we're ingesting. So, it's really important that we take pre and probiotics in combination with each other to make sure we get the best results. That being said, I do have a handful of patients that try to bring in probiotic foods, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and and kombucha is a new one, and just feel absolutely awful from it. And that is a big sign that the microbiome is not where we need it to be. So of course, I recommend these things, but if they're really not sitting well in the gut, then please stay away from them until we can get your bowels moving and your microbiome into a really great place. Polyphenols are something that are quite new in research, and I think is starting to become quite big in the world of gut. And I love all the polyphenol rich foods because they are also things that are really high in antioxidants and are just such nutrient dense foods. So things like pomegranates, blueberries, cranberries, beetroot, bitter greens, rockets, olives, they're all foods that are so fantastic for us. I don't think we eat enough of them, but they really do go in and feed the microbiome. Quality protein. Grass-fed's such a big thing now, and I will always recommend organic or grass-fed where we can, but also moving away from just that really high red meat intake. So making sure we're also having fish and chicken and eggs and tofu and tempeh and beans and lentils, all of the whole protein spectrum of things, because I think we can get very stuck on the same things that we eat. And then with the fruits and veg, look, we all know this. It's like nutrition 101 is fruits and vegetables. But if you can challenge yourself to get in 30 different foods in one day, it's where I try and get all my patients towards the end of their protocols. It will have a huge impact on diversifying and feeding your microbiome. But let's get a bit more specific when we're talking about food. So, 2 kiwi fruits a day. Now, this is clinical, evidence-based research that have come out about kiwis. It's an enzyme, a specific enzyme in them that actually help with digestion and getting the bowels moving. And so I say to people, look, if we can get you eating 2 kiwi fruits a day rather than having to rely on Movicol or whatever other motility agent we're using, then why not? People ask, is it gold kiwi fruits or green kiwi fruits? I have found for and against evidence for both of them. So I just say whatever's cheapest. I think kiwis have they have a similar situation with like lemons and limes. When the lemons are expensive, the limes are really cheap, and vice versa. I think the same thing goes on with kiwis. So, whatever's cheaper. I do like people to eat the skin, but I will honestly say I can't get the green skins in. I just freak out with the texture. So, if you want to eat the skins, the golden is much better in that respect. But whatever you can do, great. Uh, Chia seeds and flaxseed meal. Flaxseed meal is an important one. This isn't the whole flaxseed, it's flaxseed that has been ground down into a powder to create, it's almost like a flour. What you want to do is 1 teaspoon of chia, 1 teaspoon of flaxseed meal into a glass of water, let it sit for 10 minutes or so, and then drink that down. As a result, you'll get amazing daily bowel motions. So let's get quite specific. If you don't implement anything, please implement this: 2 kiwi fruits, chia seeds, flaxseed meal. You'll get great bowel motions. So let's have a chat about Haley. So Haley was a really interesting patient that I worked with about a year ago now. So she was 48, diagnosed with chronic constipation from her gastro, and quite similar story, just not much support, didn't like no real support on where to go next. So she was having a bowel motion every 4 to 5 days. So, as you can understand, feeling pretty awful and pretty uncomfortable, foggy. She was getting really dry, hard, cracked stools, very gassy, very bloated, feeling really that incomplete feeling. Energy was down at a 2 out of 10, and she was getting brain fog. I hope you guys understand what I mean when I say brain fog, but it's very much that whole like losing your train of thought, or just your cognitive function is not there. She also had food intolerances, so garlic, onion, lentils, and dairy. And this is that bowel fecal impaction I was talking about. And this was an x-ray that she sent me. And I was just absolutely shocked to see this. So I'm sure you haven't seen many abdominal x-rays before, but if you follow my mouse here, all along here is that bowel that has been completely impacted and filled up with stool. You usually cannot see the bowel at all. You can't see any of this. You might see a little bit around the sigmoid, but no way up here. So I looked at this and I was like, I definitely have my work cut out for me with her, and I can understand how awful, absolutely awful she's feeling. So with the testing, we did a transit test, similar to the other patient I was speaking about. So it took her 3 days to see the seeds, which I wasn't surprised about, but then it followed on for 10 days, and it took 10 days for her to stop seeing seeds. We did a functional blood test. We found raised thyroid antibodies. So she had thyroid issues that hadn't been diagnosed just yet. She had low iron, low vitamin D. We did a microbiome test and found high methane, really low levels of beneficial bacteria, really low levels of digestive enzymes, and surprisingly a gluten intolerance, because I was surprised because she didn't mention anything about gluten and didn't see it as a trigger. So what did we do for her? I gave her 400 milligrams of magnesium citrate. I gave her 20 grams of, sorry, 20 drops of Iberogast in the morning to act like that prokinetic. I gave her really targeted probiotics based on her results, based on what was coming back, and a quality iron that wasn't going to give her constipation, and a vitamin D supplement. I also got her on 2 kiwis a day, gluten-free, dairy-free diet, and we also did a daily motility walk. And this was just a non-negotiable walk that I needed her to go on just to get the whole stomach moving. She had had a whole lot of stool sitting in her gut for so long, and we really wanted to make sure that we built up really good, healthy habits to make sure she didn't get back to that point. So after treatment, we redid her stool transit test. We got her down to 12 hours, which I was just beyond excited for her. Feeling really complete, having a really good bowel motion. Energy jumped up to an 8 out of 10. All her gas, all of her bloating had completely disappeared, and no brain fog either. She started to tolerate onion and garlic again, and started to make her favorite hummus that she's just stopped making because there was no way she was going to tolerate it. And she actually really started to enjoy going onto a low gluten diet. I'm a big believer that if we are taking food out of the diet, I am always finding ways of bringing it back in and making sure that we are getting you having that diverse diet. However, gluten is a different story. I think we have some really poor quality gluten here in Australia, the US, the UK. So that's probably the one thing I don't always bring back in, depending on how the client tolerates it. With her microbiome test, we got a decrease in the methane producing microbes and a huge significant increase in the beneficial bacteria, which is awesome. And she sent me a beautiful message saying she'd lost count of how many doctors and specialists she'd seen over the years and just gave her the same advice without any real progression. It all changed when I found the Gut Biome Clinic and started working with Greta. For the first time, I'm going to the bathroom every day, something I didn't realize was possible. And I want to give a huge thank you to the team. I feel fantastic and only wish I had found you sooner. So rewarding and just a huge testament to the work, why I do this type of work, because I've been in her shoes before. We've also got Sammy. So Sammy's 23, oh, sorry, 32. Um, Having a bowel motion every day, but very small little rabbit pellets coming through. She had really foul smelling gas, the kind of gas that would, how do I describe it? Like clears a room. People are just like, it's just an awful, awful smell. Waking up extremely bloated each morning. She had eczema on her elbows and her hands, and she was unsure of what foods she was intolerant to, but she was just intolerant to a whole lot. She gained 3 kilos in the last 5 months, unfortunately, despite not really changing anything and training and exercising really well. And once again, really chronically low in iron. So she was on her third infusion. We did a stool transit test, so the seed test, and it came back at 72 hours. We found low iron, signs of dehydration, and an electrolyte imbalance on her bloods. And we did a big deep dive into her food and food intolerances, and found that she bloated or reacted to a lot of onion rich meals. She had very, very low diversity. So, on a food variety scale, so that's looking at how much foods we get in a day, she was only consuming 8 different foods. And sorry, that wasn't a day, that was over a week because she just had this big fear about bringing different foods in and it reacting with her. So we gave her 400 milligrams magnesium citrate in the evening. I gave her a really high dose ginger capsule and a quality iron to boost that iron back up. Flax seeds, chia seeds, sweet potato, a whole lot of different fruits and different fruit fibers. I got her an onion-free diet, doing strong ginger teas a day, and got her into a daily meditation and yoga practice because stress was a big part of her picture. After treatment, we got her down to a 20-hour transit and, well, feeling really nice and complete, which is absolutely amazing. All the gas had gone, no foul smell at all, which means we'd cleared up a lot of the sulfur producing microbes. And we got her energy back, and she actually took up running and started a marathon, which I just was mind blown about. Her iron levels started to increase, and for the first time in a really long time, she was actually able to hold on to the iron. And she gained confidence around bringing foods into the diet once again and was up to 20 different foods in a day. So she was living with gut issues for far too long, just feeling amazing, feeling really good, right down to having a proper healthy poo. TMI, but it's true. P.S. Last week, I ran my first half marathon and I burst into tears at the finish line. I'm just so proud of how far I've come. And she was also another very rewarding patient to work with, because I understand that having constipation or a slow transit or just having your bowel full of stool, just it feels awful. It feels toxic is the best way to say it. So where does this leave you? Hopefully, you've jumped on today and learnt a bit about what's driving your underlying symptoms or your gut symptoms. And hopefully, you've got a bit of an idea about maybe not what's not working for you anymore. And I always love educating people about chronic constipation because I think you know now. I think it's very, there's not enough information out there. And now is a really good time to start the conversation about how we can make a plan to actually move forward with this and get you to a point where you are having a bowel motion every single day. So, where can we help in facilitating that for you? Because this is exactly where functional medicine works really, really well. I find it works really well in the space because we choose to do a lot of functional testing and tracking of health data. And doing a lot of this tracking and testing allows us to really identify what the root cause is and allows us to properly address that. So, it's not just a band aid approach to fixing things, it's a way of really moving you through that and teaching you how to manage it so all of the symptoms are a thing of the past. The way we achieve this is by implementing some really personalized protocols for people. And that could be anything from really targeted nutrition structure. So, working on foods that we may be causing more of an issue, and then also including things that we know help support the gut, and also helping to pull together a bit of a supplement protocol to help just get bowels moving as optimally as we possibly can. And it's the combination of these really targeted protocols and the functional testing and the ongoing support as well that allows people to make some really sustainable changes and ones where gut issues just become a thing of the past and it's not something that they're just constantly trying to treat. So, what could your pathway look like within the clinic? So, we have an onboarding process, and it's in that initial appointment that we do a deep dive into where your current health is at the moment. And it's at this initial appointment, we get a good idea of a timeline of things. So, when did the symptoms start? What makes them worse? Was it 3 years ago? Was it off the back of another health issue that it started? From there, we'll also do a deep dive into how your current gut is functioning at the moment. So, we want to know everything from appetite to bowel motions to bloating to gas to what things are looking like. And once we get a good idea of that, we'll then start questioning and see if skin is being impacted, if immune system is being impacted, maybe if hormone health is playing like a cyclic role in what's happening with your gut. So there's a few different offshoots that are mind gut connection is a really big one we have a look at as well. And we also will do a bit of an analysis of what you're currently eating at the moment. So we'll try and pick up on any food intolerances that we feel like may be contributing to your symptoms, and also try and guide you in a direction where we can reduce some of those intolerances or really identify them. At that initial appointment, we also send people off for some functional testing, and that could be anything from a stool test or a urine test. Sometimes we do some functional pathology testing to have a look if the thyroid is playing a role or what's happening with iron levels, vitamin D, your nutrient absorption. We'll always be doing a transit test, so really figuring out how long it takes for your gut to move things through, and also creating a great framework around a food intolerance or food diet diary. So we can get really clear on what foods are triggering and what foods we feel like are working a lot better. So we send people off for that testing. You go away, collect a lot of that health data, and then within about 4 weeks or so, you catch up with your practitioner for an initial follow-up appointment. It's at that initial follow-up appointment where your practitioner has had a good look at where your symptoms are at the moment, gets a really good idea from what's come back from your test, so has interpreted your test results and pulled that information into a 3 month, 6 month, 5 month protocol. Now, in that first initial follow-up appointment, you'll get a full interpretation of all of your results and you'll kickstart the protocol from that appointment. And it's in that appointment we aim to treat your symptoms acutely. So if there is chronic constipation or gas and bloating going on, we're trying to get your bowels moving every day. We're trying to eliminate as much gas, as much bloating as possible. So we may bring in some really targeted supplements to help with that, and we may implement some just initial diet structure to help facilitate and reduce some of those symptoms. After that initial follow-up appointment, you then catch up with your practitioner on a monthly basis, just working through the different phases of the protocol. And the whole idea is by the time we get to the end of your protocol, you're off as many supplements as possible. You're eating as wide variety as you possibly can. And you're ideally symptom free. So getting to a point where there's no constipation, no gas, no bloating, have a really clear idea of your food intolerances. And what we also do is we do a final retest. So we do a final retest of your transit time and ideally have seen a huge improvement. So a huge increase in your ability to move food through the digestive tract. We may retest bloods as well. Look, it's the functional stool testing can be an investment, so we don't always retest that, but we'd love to if you do have the capacity to do it. But we will always retest just to check where you're at and just make adjustments from there. So in regards to your investment, so an initial appointment is 210, and then the testing that gets associated with that is anywhere from about $25 to $450. Now, blood tests are $25, or you can go back to your doctor, or the functional testing is anywhere up to about 450. And these are prices that are set by independent labs. So it's their pricing that they've put in place. An initial follow-up is 190, and then every follow-up after then is 157. So just roughly pulling together at what a 6-month protocol investment could look like from a appointment point of view, it's 1,028. Now, also a note here with nutrition consults, they are all claimable under specific health funds that do offer a rebate for nutrition. So just make sure if you do have private health and they do offer nutrition as something that they cover, we're more than happy to help get some rebate back with that as well. However, if you choose to do a structured support setup within the clinic or run off the back of this masterclass discount, we'd love to offer you a $123 discount on what your 6-month protocol could look like. So that brings your whole 6 months down to $905. Now, with the 905, you don't pay it all at once. It is paid per appointment as the appointments start to happen. There's complete flexibility in moving your appointments forward or back or canceling and changing it to the next month. And then the price doesn't come out until that appointment is done. So there is complete flexibility within that, but it just allows you to access discounts that makes the protocol more financially achievable. We do also find that patients who choose to do this setup, a structured support setup within the clinic, have incredible outcomes. And it's a lot to do with the mindset around, okay, this is the next 6 months. I'm investing my time and energy and money into myself. This is an investment in myself. And just subconsciously connecting with a structured support setup allows you to just get into the mindset of, okay, we're doing some big changes here. This isn't just a 1 or 2 off appointment. We also find that practitioners know that they've got someone for, say, 3 months or 6 months, and they are able to map out everything they want to try to achieve within that time frame. So it's a huge win-win for both the patients and practitioners. So if you do feel like, or you resonate with our work and you feel like you want to get to a point where you can finally eliminate the chronic constipation, the gas, and the bloating, or you're interested about getting some functional testing and tracking a bit of your health data and learn how to track your health data, then we would absolutely love to help facilitate that. So there's 2 options here. You can either press a book now button, or there's the option to do a high touch quiz that really pinpoints what your driving cause is and what the root cause of your symptoms may be, and also direct you to the best practitioner that specializes in those conditions. So the option is either these 2 buttons are on your page, or they're down within the comment section. You'll be able to access them there. But please, if you have any questions about the clinic or any conditions that you may have, or who may be the best practitioner for you, please get in contact. We'd love to be able to support you because we work endlessly in this space, and we've been able to get some fantastic results for people. And we'd love to be able to include you within that.